said, Blanche is shattering post-Watergate norms that protected the country, y'all, from a president who wants to weaponize the Justice Department for personal or political gain. And Blanche has been laying the groundwork for this moment for months, years maybe. Back in April, then acting AG Blanche boldly asserted that Trump has a, quote, right and duty to influence individual investigations. And over the course of Trump's second term, the Justice Department has weaponized the institution to target the president's perceived foes.
Of course, Trump's to-do list for Todd Blanche expands well beyond the president's petty retribution campaign. Y'all know that. He's also pressuring the DOJ to sow doubts in our elections ahead of the midterms. During that same Meet the Press interview, Blanche said he's ready to take Trump's push to obtain states' voter rolls as all the way to the Supreme Court. In fact, just today, a federal judge in Minnesota dismissed another attempt by the administration to access state voter rolls. This comes hours after Trump's DOJ appealed 3 similar rulings. In total, the Justice Department has lost 23 of these cases so far, winning 0, none.
Todd Blanche has a superpower, if I, could say so. And I think his superpower is making the extraordinary sound ordinary and run-of-the-mill. He does this very, very well. He sounds like a very boring, normal, good old boy lawyer that's just trying to tell the people what's going on. And, oh, my goodness, these Democrats are so snowflakes and they're blowing everything out of proportion when, Kirsten, what do you mean? That's ridiculous. No, Todd Blanche is ridiculous. And people need to be very well aware. Just like the chairman just laid out how they're trying to steal the election, they have re-engineered what this Justice Department was meant to do and have done it using normal-sounding language, describing extraordinary actions that we should not just gloss over, Eugene.
When you watch him compared to Pam Bondi does feel more political when she's talking, right? He feels like a lawyer. That is your point. And I think the thing that's so interesting about watching how he is going to be operating as the Attorney General is there's the explicit, the heavy-handed stuff that we hear from Donald Trump. Go out there and go get him, Pam, or whatever that tweet said. Someone could fact check me. He did say it. But then there is the implicit, right? There's the fact that at the end of the day, there have been 10 years of Donald Trump talking about his perceived foes. And there have been 18 months of this administration. Todd Blanche knows his marching orders. He knows what Donald Trump wants. So he doesn't have to wait for any actual orders. So it's our job as folks in the media and the folks that care about these kinds of things to watch and pay attention, because I think it's going to get a lot worse.
Goal. So the two things that we're famous for is our commitment to a program and our hatred of the United States Constitution. And what the program does is it gives us a roadmap to revolution, and it gives us the obstacle that we finally will have to get over to have a revolution, which is the United States Constitution, the basis of the United States government. And what the minimum maximum program specifically, what that format specifically gives us is that roadmap. It gives us the minimum circumstances under which we would be able to take power and govern. And it gives us the maximum program, which is the goals that we're actually aiming for. It also clarifies democracy as both the end goal and as part of the process to get there ensures the internal party democracy that we want to see in DSA. So it really wraps up the revolutionary tradition of democracy that I think socialism and abolitionism in the United States have always been a part of, and aims at a future that we can live in as a human species. Because I think absent a revolutionary democratic socialist republic in North America, we may not have a livable future.
Tuesday, 18 August, Sheriff Alert 2026. I want to thank Natalie Winters for getting that last clip. We played in the morning show. I asked the Viceroy to join us, Mike Davis. I want to get into the Todd Blanche and what they're saying there, but I've got to get because this guy is Cliff Connolly. He's the senior, policy guy, strategist for DSA. They're not shy about what their objectives are. Right there, Mike Davis, I think I could say you've kind of dedicated your life to the defense of the Constitution. And right there, the DSA guys are telling you, hey, it's the number one obstacle in front of them for seizing power and changing this to the Democratic Socialist Republic of North America. Your thoughts, sir?
There could not be a clearer contrast between the today's Democrat Party, today's Democrat Socialist Party, these Islamist and communists who are taking over the Democrat Party versus the rest of America. Today's Democrats want to destroy America. They want to destroy our Constitution. And it's very clear. It's not a conspiracy theory. You just saw the clip. It's coming right out of their mouths. They think that our United States Constitution, which is a shield to protect us from government tyranny and government anarchy, is their greatest obstacle. And they're saying it explicitly. And they're attacking people like Todd Blanche. Todd is Trump's all-star attorney general of the United States. And they see Todd Blanche as the leading warrior for the Constitution. So they hate Todd Blanche because they hate the Constitution, because they hate America. And it's they're not hiding this. It's pretty illuminating that they're saying this very publicly. So that is the contrast that we see between Trump Republicans and today's communist Democrats as we go into November.
Okay, so and by the way, this guy's a senior guy. He's not some hoplite. He's not a grundoon. Okay, this is a senior guy, and this is one of those Zoom calls they have strategizing. The question gets to be, that sounds like to me sedition. We love Todd Blanche. We worked with Todd Blanche for years in the trenches against long odds when he had the courage to step in and actually defend President Trump. But you're seeing, like on Meet the Press, even where he's saying, "Hey, look, you can have ICE at the polling places because the only people who are going to get nervous are people that shouldn't be there to vote, and we want them nervous because they're not going to be allowed to vote." But isn't it time that the Justice Department has to pivot? There is a revolution going on in this country, and it's the DSA, which is just the happy clappy veneer of Mandani. But right below that, as we have documented now day after day after day, they want a revolution in this country, and they want the overthrow of the Constitution. They couldn't be clearer than that. Isn't it time that we started to really give them some hardball tactics, Viceroy?
Yes, I mean, yes, absolutely. This is a seditious conspiracy. This is insurrection. When you are advocating for the violent overthrow of our government, that is a seditious conspiracy. When you actually attempt to carry that out, that is insurrection. There are so many crimes when you're funding this, when you're advocating for it. This is not free speech. It's not. You do not have a First Amendment right to organize the violent overthrow of our government. You do not have a First Amendment right to carry out or attempt to carry out violence to overthrow the governments. And so they should absolutely start investigating. And I think they are, if you believe the news reports, that they're looking at their funding, they're looking at these meetings, and these people who are advocating for violence against the United States need to be thrown in prison.
I want to go back to the first part of that because this is going to be a relentless drumbeat. It's all day long, and it's in the A block for 2 days in a row. Actually, for 3 if you count the Sunday morning shows. They are absolutely apoplectic that Todd has shifted this kind of paradigm back to pre-Watergate. Just walk our audience through, what does that mean, and why is this the basics of the Article 2 power of the president, sir?
Yeah, so under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the president has the executive power, all executive power, and that means that all of his cabinet officials, every executive branch employee reports to the president of the United States. That includes the Attorney General of the United States, especially the Attorney General of the United States, because the Attorney General has so much power to arrest people, to disrupt our lives, to sue, to arrest, to imprison. Of course, we want the Attorney General to be accountable to the duly elected President of the United States. That's why we have a republic. We elect our leaders, and we have Democrat accountability. The Democrats only want the Attorney General to report to the president of the United States when there's a Democrat president like Obama and Biden, who politicized and weaponized our intel agencies and justice system to go after their political enemies like Trump, his top aides and allies, his supporters on January 6th, parents, Christians, you, Steve Bannon, who went to the clink, Peter Navarro. They're trying to go after Jeff Clark. Democrats only believe the Justice Department is independent when there's a Democrat president. Todd Blanche correctly knows that there is not an independent Justice Department. The Justice Department reports to the president. Every federal officer, every federal law enforcement officer, every federal agent, every federal prosecutor reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General, who reports to the President of the United States, who is elected by all Americans. If you're arguing for a different system than that, you're arguing for a deep state. The Democrats pretend the deep state is a conspiracy theory, but we know it's not, because these law enforcement officers who don't think they report to the Attorney General, who reports to the President, who reports to all Americans through elections, is confirming that there is a deep state.
Let me ask you before I let you go, is you got a grand jury, and you got Joe DeGenova and the U.S. attorney down there working this grand jury in South Florida. But that is for the conspiracy against President Trump and the MAGA movement, all that, over many, many, many years. You also have this rise of DSA and its foreign backers. Do you think we need a special prosecutor just for that, so they can get on top of where this money's coming from? And I realize there may be some investigations coming on, but don't you need to take a U.S. attorney that's already been confirmed and actually wrap it around that, so then you have a driving force and staff it up with people and do it quickly, sir?
The U.S. attorneys across America need to step up. They need to do their jobs. They need to start investigating. They need to start indicting. They need to start imprisoning these violent agitators who are calling for the overthrow of our government. That is a seditious conspiracy. That is insurrection. There are many other federal crimes that go along with it besides insurrection and seditious conspiracy. There's general conspiracy. There's assault on federal law enforcement. There's wire fraud. There's money laundering. There are so many potential RICO violations. There are so many potential crimes. These U.S. attorneys need to step up and start investigating, indicting, and imprisoning these violent agitators who are calling for the overthrow of our governments.
As my mom used to say, I'm going to give you something to whine about when you start crying and doing the boo-hoo. That's what we got to. These guys are going to call us fascist every day. They're going to call us every name in the book. It's now time to show them what the steel rod means, because this is getting out of control and they're not hiding it. Viceroy, where do they go to Article 3 to become part of this, of the fight back on this revolution, sir?
Article3project.org, article3project.org. Donate, follow us on social media. The superpower for the War Room Posse, action, action, action. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you, brother. But real quickly, social media, where do people go to get you on Twitter and a Getter and all that? Where do they go? MRDDMIA, MRDDMIA. And coming in hot. Thank you, Steve. Coming in hot. Picking up the mantle from Boris. Incredible. I want to thank the sponsor, Birch Gold, Bannon, Bannon, 989898. Ultimate guide for investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. It's totally free and there's no obligation. They will tell you about your IRA, your 401k, how you can roll it over on a tax-deferred basis, all the technicalities of it. But most importantly, find out why gold has been ahead. You've seen the movement in gold. It ain't the daily price. It's the pattern recognition of what drives the price. Remember, that's the pattern recognition of what drives the price. Birchgold.com. Also, birchgold.com /Bannon. Mo, did I get that right? /Bannon into the dollar empire. Find out about the petrodollar. Find out about the U.S. currency as the backbone of the global financial system and what it means to you and your family. Short break.
Justice.
So the two things that we're famous for is our commitment to a program and our hatred of the United States Constitution. And what the program does is it gives us a roadmap to revolution, and it gives us the obstacle that we finally will have to get over to have a revolution, which is the United States Constitution, the basis of the United States government. And what the minimum maximum program specifically, what that format specifically gives us is that roadmap. It gives us the minimum circumstances under which we would be able to take power and govern. And it gives us the maximum program, which is the goals that we're actually aiming for. It also clarifies democracy as both the end goal and as part of the process to get there, ensures the internal party democracy that we want to see in DSA. So it really wraps up the revolutionary tradition of democracy that I think socialism and abolitionism in the United States have always been a part of, and aims it, at a future that we can live in as a human species, because I think absent a revolutionary democratic socialist republic in North America, we may not have a livable future.
Okay, welcome back. Steve Cortes. So Cortes, you've been working relentlessly on populist nationalism, on giving working people in this country a piece of the action, some hope. Yeah. And yet you have, that's DSA. And they ain't shy. Let's leave the legality of the Constitution that aside. I know you're not a lawyer. Right. They're essentially calling for a seditious overthrow of the government because they're saying, hey, we don't care what Cortes and Bannon and all this happy talk is about populist nationalism. At the end of the day, the capitalist system is out to exploit these workers, and we're offering them a path to nirvana called the Democratic Socialist Republic of North America. Your response, sir?
Well, my first response, Steve, is I can't believe that you made me watch that and made the audience watch that. That's what happens when the theater kids take over in society instead of the jocks, okay, who should be running things. But in all seriousness, when he says there that he hates the Constitution, what he's really saying is, I hate the United States of America, right? I hate you. I specifically hate white Christian Americans. I hate your parents and your grandparents who did so much to found and grow this amazing country. And you're exactly right. They're not being shy about it. I guess to some extent, we should almost be grateful that they're being so blunt, right? And that they're putting it so in our face. And I do think it is awakening sensible, patriotic people around the country. And where we're going to see the rubber hit the road on this issue, Steve, is in Michigan. Because in Michigan now we have a full-fledged jihadi, Marxist, fully DSA-aligned radical nominated by the Democrat Party to sit in the United States Senate. And based on early polling, and I'll give you a little sneak preview of some of my polling, which should be out by tomorrow, fully public at Daily Signal, it is a horse race. And I think credible public polling, including my own, shows that this race, at least right now, is going to be tight. I think Mike Rogers ends up winning, but he only wins, I think, if these issues are clarified, meaning these are not your parents and your grandparents' Democrats. These are not patriotic, loyal opposition figures. These are revolutionary radicals who hate us, who hate everything about us.
Okay, but they're not okay. But hang on, slow down. The first poll that came out was a Fox poll. There was another poll. I think it showed up 3-5 on the first cut. Rogers up to 3-5. I think even their internals, which they're working on, shows Rogers up 3-5. And that is being undefined, that really you haven't taken the time or you haven't had the opportunity to frame Abdul because he's positioned in the media, even after the primary. It's just this caring guy who's maybe not a doctor, but pretended to be one. He's a public health official. He's very caring. He's very loving. He just wants to take care of people. He's kind of the embodiment. He's not a jihadist. He's not a jihadist. He's kind of the embodiment of the gospel according to St. Matthew, isn't he?
Well, not at all. That's how the corporate media, the legacy media would like him to be positioned, but that's not reality at all. And by the way, so I found to that point of, he hasn't been properly framed yet. He hasn't been exposed yet for whom he is. When we do that, in my poll, for example, we bring up his allegiance with Hassan Piker, who's really one of the most, unfortunately, influential, but most radical and America-hating figures in this entire country. Somebody who doesn't even belong here in the first place, but unfortunately has been quite successful spewing hate about the United States. So when we inform voters in Michigan, and you have to be careful with informed ballots, okay? Look, I do all my polling in a very credible way, and at the end of the survey, so that we're not influenced of the survey, that's where we will put informed questions like this. So we inform them that Hassan Piker said that America deserved 9/11, which he did, very emphatically said. When we inform voters of that in Michigan, 64%, 2/3, say they are less likely to vote for him. So that's fascinating. By the way, even among Democrats in Michigan, 47%, nearly a majority, say they're less likely to vote for El Sayed when they are informed of his campaigning in Michigan with Piker and informed that Piker said that America deserved 9/11. You know, I further found that among just independents and Democrats, so people who either did vote in the Democrat primary or were at least inclined to vote in the Democrat primary in Michigan, because there was no serious primary on the Republican side, 29% say they are not satisfied with El Sayed as the nominee. 37% of seniors, independent and Democrat seniors, okay, not Republicans, independent Democrat seniors, 37% said they are not satisfied with Sayed as the nominee. So my belief and my expectation is the more we frame who he is, the more we expose who he is, we're going to win this race. But I also think, particularly those of us on the outside, not people who actually work for Mike Rogers, but people on the outside who are going to be involved in this race, we need to go even further than that. I told you a few weeks back about the poll I took in Michigan, which is a state that has experienced this Muslim migration like no other state in America, where they have completely taken over communities like Dearborn and Hamtramck. And we asked if there was too much Muslim migration versus too few. By a 6-to-1 margin, 6-to-1, the good citizens of Michigan said too much versus too few. Even among Kamala Harris voters, by a 2-to-1 margin, they said too much. Among Kamala Harris voters in Michigan, by a 2-to-1 margin, too much Muslim migration versus too few. So this time, Steve, I just went back and I asked again. We just finished this poll. It's not even public yet. I just asked again, and I asked this in a sort of more clinical way this time. Instead of just saying, hey, too much, too little, is Michigan better off or worse off for Muslim migration? And we asked about Christian migration, because we're trying to be scientific here. So we're trying to isolate what's the Muslim part specifically. And so when we ask, for example, seniors, is Michigan better off or worse off for Christian migration? Only 3% said worse off. That's it, okay, among seniors in Michigan. 36% said worse off for Muslim migration. So 12 times the level. Only 3% for Christian migration. So that shows us that they're not generally anti-migrant. And then 36% say that Michigan is worse off because of Muslim migration. And Steve, here's the thing too. I think these numbers are actually quite low. I think a lot of people are probably reticent to tell a pollster what they really think. But even these numbers, I think, are very revealing that there's something brewing in this country, but particularly in places like Michigan, where people are starting to get honest and are saying, we have third world migration to this country. They're not even pretending to try to assimilate. They don't live in a way that is consistent with Western values. They don't believe in or love our country. And in many cases, particularly in places like Minneapolis, they are systemically scamming the system. I'm exposing that in Maine as well, in Lewiston, Maine. So when you put all of those factors together, Americans, including the good patriots of Michigan, are starting to get honest about this topic. And I think this is a place where those of us on the right, Steve, can't be afraid to go. As a matter of fact, I think people are almost begging us to go there with leadership and to say, hey, mass Muslim migration is not consistent with our values, and it will not lead to the success of the United States. All we need to do is look at the terrible examples of Europe and say that we in the United States are going to go a different route. We still believe in Western civilization. Unfortunately, the cradle of Western civilization, Europe itself, does not any longer, but we do here, and we are not going to follow their tragic example. The rest of the country shouldn't be following the example of Michigan, which now even the citizens of Michigan are being honest about rejecting.
The cradle of our victory, besides the courage and the valor of the American fighting man in World War II, which was, unbelievable. The railhead of the victory, the arsenal of democracy, is in Detroit. Yeah. The beating heart of America's rise to an industrial superpower. How do folks in Detroit, and when I say folks in Detroit, I'm talking about Black working class and middle class, and how do folks in Macomb County, the heart of Reagan Democrats, what is your sense of what they think about Abdul El-Sayed, sir?
Yeah. Well, I think we have good evidence of what they think, and that was the primary, of course, which, Abdul barely won. He would not have won without the overwhelming Muslim support he got in the Muslim enclaves, again, particularly Dearborn and Hamtramck, because his margin of victory was so razor thin, and particularly in black areas. He did terribly in those areas of Michigan. And I think what it tells us, Steve, is, and this is, I think, an important lesson for us to know on the right, is that, look, at the decision maker level, the Democrat Party is totally radicalized. All of their elected officials, all the party operatives are completely radicalized. They are DSA. This whole nonsense of there's a DSA versus establishment battle, that's BS, not at the decision maker level. However, at the voter level, what that primary shows us, I think, is there are still people who vote Democrat just because of a legacy bias, just because that's the way their parents voted, because they belong to a union, they were told to vote Democrat. But they're pretty sensible, patriotic people. And they rejected al-Sayed. He barely squeaked through the primary. And I think some of those people can be encouraged to either not vote in this election or come over to Mike Rogers, obviously preferably the latter. But I also think, again, Steve, it's imperative that those of us with guts who get involved in races, and we don't have to speak in the name of the candidate, I certainly won't be, we have to dive into the issues that are considered to be sort of third rails. Like, oh, well, we're not supposed to talk about that. Are we really supposed to reject Muslim mass migration? Hell, yes, we are supposed to, because it's terrible for this country. It's been horrendous for Europe, worse than terrible for Europe. It has a foothold here in the United States, particularly in the state of Michigan. And it is totally consistent for us to say that we need to talk about a system of beliefs, and I think it's more a political system than a religious one, but to some degree it's both, but a system of beliefs that is antithetical to the American way of life, and especially when the strongest adherents of this belief itself are telegraphing it to us. They're not mincing words. They are telling us, as that cretin did in that video you showed, that he doesn't want the United States of America anymore. He wants some sort of North American Confederation, which I guess would probably involve the globalists from Canada. I guess the whole Trudeau Carney crowd would be welcomed into this grand country that they somehow envision once they jettison the United States Constitution. No, we need to push back and say absolutely not.
And probably Mexico also. Anyway, hang on. Steve Cortes is with us. Short commercial break. Return in a moment.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, artificial intelligence, cyber, the combination, rogue lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, maybe a rogue significant other. Don't let anybody get their mitts on your title. Every dream you've ever had is in that home. And if you're lucky enough to own one, because, hey, guess what? Starter homes now, I think it's over 40 years old. So you're blessed to have one. Don't let anybody get in and monetize that title. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Steve, that would be me. You get a free title history report, plus 14 days free of the $1 million triple lock protection. Natalie Dominguez and the team can show you all about it for pennies a day. Protect yourself, which will be turn every dream you've ever had into a nightmare. Also, October 15th extension deadline is coming up. You can get your federal tax return started, be worked on, your IRS file pulled if you ask for an extension by going to taxnetworkusa.com/Bannon or call the hotline, which is probably best, 866-513-5516. That's 866-513-5516. With your permission, they can pull your file and start to work through what the issues are, the bid and the ask between what you think you owe and what the IRS is going to think you owe. They can pull that for $49. $49. Check it out today. Get on top of this. October 15th is coming. Of course, right after Labor Day is when all the intense work on the campaign, the midterm starts. So let's get ahead of this. Tax Network USA, great folks over there. Let's go and play a clip. I want to bring Cortes back. Let's go ahead and play this clip.
I think a lot of these people would do well to read the Gospels and take those parts of the Gospels and actually apply them literally. But they don't. Yeah. They never, ever talk about Jesus' words, because if they did, they couldn't support the policies they are pushing.
Yeah, the least among us, Jesus says, to look out for. And indeed, the hypocrisy here from so many of these people is readily apparent. So, Congressman, the title of the book is, The Fight to Save Democracy from Christian Nationalism. You've just diagnosed the problem. So if there is a fight, how is it won? What are a few things that can be done to stem the tide?
Yeah, it starts by understanding what we're up against. One of the challenges is that in this country, we're not very good at talking about the intersection of religion and politics. We show a lot of deference. Religious liberty is obviously a core value in this country, but it leaves us potentially vulnerable. There's that apocryphal quote that is attributed to Sinclair Lewis: when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross. And that is exactly why I wanted to write this book. We need a wake-up call. We've got to understand not just the political agenda, but the actual religious beliefs that animate this movement. And then we've got to come together, whether you're a Christian, a non-Christian, or a non-believer, and defend our democracy. There's still time. We can still do it. But this project is much further along than most people realize, and I wanted folks to see what I see and to understand that.
Okay, Steve, when you talk about an informed and uninformed ballot, informed is kind of consultant speak for when people actually know who the candidate is and it's been defined. It's been defined enough in the mind that people can make a decision. And so it's a kind of a horse race, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 points, uninformed. Once it's informed and they know he's a radical Muslim, you're getting up to double digits. It goes 8, 10, 12, because people say we're not going to have that.
Right.
Answer the question.
No, I agree.
Riddle me this. Yeah. But hang on. Aren't you just, when you say, and you're saying, hey, group's not working with the campaign, it is our obligation to get on that work now and define it. But aren't you just playing into that you're nothing more than a Christian nationalist, that you are in fact wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross to drive out the evil Muslims from the New Jerusalem, sir?
Well, if you are going to accuse me, Steve, of loving the cross and loving the American flag, guilty on both counts, that's for sure. And I believe that one supports the other. You know, it's interesting there that to watch that clip of these pretend theologians, right? You know, all of a sudden we're supposed to listen to Father Joe Scarborough and Lemire and that backbench congressman, whoever the heck he is. You know what I would suggest to them that they read, because I doubt they have ever, I doubt they've ever studied real theology. I would say get into Thomas Aquinas, who is arguably the greatest theologian in Christian history, certainly in the top 5. I think anybody would put him there. Not easy reading, by the way, to read Aquinas. I mean, it's pure intellect. There is no fluff in there. But if you study Aquinas, for example, specifically on the issue of immigration, Steve, Thomas Aquinas makes Bannon and Cortes look like complete softies on immigration. For example, he says that immigrants can never become citizens because they can be allowed to stay under certain circumstances, but can't get citizenship because they will have too much allegiance to their former country. He even goes further, and he posits that perhaps the second and even third generations should not become citizens of that country. He also says, by the way, and this is getting back to the Michigan race specifically, he says there are certain cultures that can never intermingle. That he just says it's unworkable. They cannot intermesh. Their worldviews are too separate. And I would suggest to you that that's Western civilization and Islam, particularly this Islamist Marxist combination, this toxic marriage that we now see in the United States. It's completely incompatible with who we are as a country, who we aspire to be as a society, and who we are acting like when we're being our best. So look, I will dismiss that troika of pretend theologians who want to use Christianity when it's convenient to them, even though they advocate for abortion until the moment of birth, and remind them that if you want to read serious theology, if you want to understand what's real historic Christian doctrine on a very contentious subject like immigration, guess what? It's going to come out much more in favor of those of us who favor real patriotic populist nationalism than it is going to be for you globalists.
And part of that nationalism, let's talk about that. You're saying not only do you seal the border, which the president has done. There's always some gaps every now and again, but he's done that. But it's also, you've got to do the mass deportations. In your case, you're saying, hey, not just the illegal aliens that come here, but these scam immigration programs, including we've had the temporary status reversed, yet I don't see Haitians by the plane load leaving here, sir. So how do we solve this problem in Michigan, and how do we make this the top of mind in this election?
Yes, well, I think that the quickest way, and you don't need congressional action to do this, is really accelerate internal enforcement. You're exactly right. President Trump deserves enormous credit, saved the country by closing that open border. But now the very hard work, and it's going to obviously take time, but it's got to accelerate the hard work of internal enforcement needs to accelerate to prove to the American people we have your back in terms of your economic security, your street safety, and the national security of this nation. And I would point, Steve, specifically to manufacturing, where we see protectionism working. We as Republicans shouldn't be afraid of that term of protection, okay? Government exists to protect people. It exists to protect public order, to protect borders, to protect American industries, American jobs from predatory trade practices. We see it working right now in manufacturing. There's a quiet manufacturing boom unfolding in this country. I wrote an article penned exactly that. That is the title of it at Daily Signal about the quiet manufacturing boom. Well, let's stop being quiet about it. Number one, let's tell this story, because we have factory activity exploding to new 4-year highs, factory employment exploding to new 4-year highs. That's fantastic. But what does it show us? It shows that when we prioritize our people, our industries, our factories, that these policies produce real, tangible returns for the American people. And that can only accelerate the more we get the illegal laborers who don't belong in the workforce competing against American labor in this country, the more we get them out of the United States, the more we see real wage gains gallop higher. And the reality is right now, Steve, because prices are elevated because of the war, and we obviously hope that's temporary and going to end soon, but because of that, the American consumer, the sentiment among the American consumers right now is poor, despite this manufacturing boom. But once we end this war, which again, I think will be soon, once we do, and once we get prices headed back to a more reasonable place where sentiment starts to improve and people then can really appreciate what's happening in the manufacturing boom, and again, I'm connecting this back to border issues, then we have the beginnings and I think the building blocks for a sustainable prosperity, Main Street prosperity that's very real. We can start to get back to that place that we were in 2019, which was perhaps the greatest year in all of American history for American workers, when the Trump boom 1.0 was accelerating, pre-CCP virus being unleashed upon the world, and we saw the biggest gains of all going to the people who needed it most, blue-collar American workers. We have right now the kindling to get back there. We have the green shoots growing out of the ground in terms of manufacturing. That's not my opinion, by the way. I give all the statistics there in my piece. For example, give you a tangible one that I think is fantastic news. Trump inherited a factory construction rate in the first quarter that he was president of 9,300 jobs. This quarter, and counting, because of course we're still in the quarter, but this current quarter, 93,000 construction jobs to build new factories, 10 times the rate that he inherited of construction jobs to build factories. What does that tell us? Onshoring works, that protectionism works, that we need both incentives as well as punishments, carrot and stick, to make sure that manufacturing production happens here on our shores. 10 times the construction jobs. Steve, those are quality, family-sustaining, high-paying jobs that Americans need to fill, and Americans are filling. But again, to bring it back to the border issue, it means let's make sure that they don't have to compete unjustly, illegally, unfairly against foreigners who have broken our laws and trespassed into the United States to try to take some of those very 93,000 positions.
In the convergence of all the positive policies of President Trump in the first term, it was that really fall and Christmas season of 2019, before the bioweapon was let loose on us, that it all converged together. Blue collar wages rising higher than white collar, non-college graduates higher than college graduates. I mean, it was nirvana because it showed you the convergence. I might note to people that when the deep state found the laptop from hell and had it in there, they did not release it when they got it in November of 2019. Now, why was that? Because the selected candidate to take on Trump was going to be Joe Biden. There was no DSA. In fact, Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, who are DSA light, right, were blown out. That's why they never released it. There was no real DSA back then. Why was that? These policies were working. This whole Marxist jihadist this is the way you've got to confront the Trump MAGA movement of populist nationalism, Steve Cortes. They're quite smart about how they go after this. And this is why your story is so important, because you can't take a copy of Milton Friedman and wave it in front of these in front of these DSA people and think you're going to beat them. You have to show it with action, and it has to manifest in people's lives. Steve Cortes.
100%. And especially for young Americans. Look, anybody who knows recent college graduates, whether from undergrad or graduate schools, knows this is a terrible job market right now. Okay. And we cannot sugarcoat that reality. A lot of young people, even ones who went to good schools and tried to get solid degrees, even STEM degrees, they're having a really hard time in the job market. So it is understandable that they are susceptible to some of the seduction of socialism. Hey, we'll give you a bunch of free crap. Okay, well, that sounds okay to me, right? So what's our answer? It can't just be, oh, they're Marxists and that's enough. Now, we should label them. They are Marxists, but you're exactly correct. We can't throw a Milton Friedman, free to choose tome in front of them and think that that's going to change things. No, we need to make their life better. We need to show them that they have tangible, real opportunity. This manufacturing boom is part of that. It's part of the equation. It's not the only answer, of course, but it's part of it. I think an even bigger part for young people is getting rid of these worker visas, because worker visas overwhelmingly bring in foreign young people. They generally don't bring in people my age in their 50s or in their 60s. No, they're bringing in young people. OPT, for example, were foreigners who go to school here, and I don't even think they should be in school here in the first place, Steve, but putting that aside, when they go to school here, they get to stay for at least a year, in most cases 3 years, as illegal workers in the United States. Get rid of OPT. Get rid of it right now. We can do it by executive order. Just say, okay, you got your degree. Good luck. Go home and make your country great again. But you're not working here. You're not going to take a job away from a 24-year-old who graduated from college, has college debt to pay, and is living with their parents and is ticked off.
Hang on one second. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll continue with Brother Cortes. Just a moment.
We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all life for too long.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Talk about a positive. Break the stranglehold of big pharma on your life. You can do it, particularly when it comes to these drugstores and the big pharma distribution companies. allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. This morning, we had Michael Kunzler on, done a great job of setting this company up. The reviews we're getting back from the posse are just absolutely overwhelming. They got a special to give access to more people. allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Promo code Bannon25. You get 25% off your order. I don't know. They have, 500, 600 different types of medications and drugs. You've got a pharmacist. You've got licensed medical professionals for each state. Go check it out today. Check out the reviews. allfamilypharmacy.com/Bannon. Bannon25 for 25% off. We got a short clip from Steve's new film. Let's go and play it.
If you approach Argentina with an open mind, that you will gain new respect for this resurgent power.
He's so real. Like, you don't have to create a character. Like, it's there.
He had a fiscal surplus the very first month as president. The last time that happened in Argentina was 20 years ago.
Milei dijo, yo sigo apostando a achicar el Estado, a mayor libertad, a mayor transparencia.
They are putting the House in order in a way that demonstrates to the world that they're serious about it.
What's your prognostication? Will he win? Make Argentina great again.
Cortes, what lessons have you taken from Argentina, and what lessons you've done now? I think dozens of these great investigative films. You've been running great pieces. This one today, people got to read on this manufacturing, because it talks about the specific details of what we need to do, turn this around. And you've got to give people an alternative. If you're going to sit there on Fox and talk about, they're going to raise taxes on the wealthy and read Milton Friedman, it ain't going to work. You're going to have a Marxist jihadist take over this nation, sir.
No, listen, what I have found working class people throughout the Americas, right? And I find this across Latin America where great things are going on, and certainly all across this great land, which of course is my first priority, even though I care about the hemisphere. First and foremost, of course, United States citizen, is that people are really, they are yearning for two things. They want cultural conservatism, meaning they want normalcy, right? They reject the lunacy of the left on things like gender issues and transitioning children. They want cultural conservatism. And then secondly, they want populist, nationalist economic policies. They want to believe that there is opportunity for them and for their children, and that a system that formerly worked really well for their parents and grandparents is going to work for them, their children, and grandchildren. And that is not a widely held belief right now. So we have work to do on that score. I mean, work to do on both scores, of course. But I find that is, to me, Steve, the killer combination, and it is the answer to the left, is we are going to espouse cultural conservatism plus populist, nationalist economics. And when we do that, it is a winning formula, and the masses come our way. And that's how we build a coalition like we built in 2024, where we didn't just win every swing state, but also the national popular vote. And to get really tangible about this, by the way, to connect the Argentina thing with manufacturing, Steve, part of us being a manufacturing powerhouse in this modern age is we need critical materials, far too many of which we're getting from China right now, which is problematic, of course, in so many ways, getting it from our existential enemy. Well, guess who else has them in abundance? Argentina does. So we should be getting them from the Americas, from our own hemisphere. That will make American manufacturing stronger, what we do here at home. So, you know, it is a holistic approach. But Steve, that is overarchingly what I hear, what I learn when I'm on the ground. I'm going next week back to Wisconsin again, key battleground state, of course, always. We're going to talk illegal alien crime. That far from the U.S.-Mexico border, illegal alien crime has been a scourge on Wisconsin. I'm going to Fond du Lac, a wonderful American community that you would never believe has had such horrific, violent, illegal alien crime. We're going to make sure that the victims, that the cops, that the people on the ground have a voice and a platform to talk about it. But that's what they're yearning for more than anything, Steve, is they want cultural normalcy, and they want opportunity through populist nationalist economics.
Cortes, you're 100% correct. We're going to have to go and expose this and talk about what policies. And this is not the campaign's responsibility. These are outside folks like yourself, the War Room, and others going to have to do it. We're going to have to do the hard work of this, and the Warren Posse is going to help us, have to help us drive this. It's ironic that in the arsenal of democracy, which is Detroit and the great state of Michigan, hardworking, working class people up there have done so much to make the United States a manufacturing superpower. This will be decided. Cortes, where do they go for your investigative reports, your films, your articles, all of it, sir?
Yes, please go to CortesInvestigates.com, Cortes with an S at the end, CortesInvestigates.com. All of the content is there. Thank you so much, Steve.
Great work. Appreciate it. Go there for all the content. We're going to leave you with the DSA's theme song, Streets of Minneapolis, from I know your favorite, Bruce Springsteen. Stick around. I'm going to get organized here, and we're going to come back in a few minutes for the 6 o'clock show. Hopefully today we've shown you a little bit of the Marxists. Now, in the next hour, we're going to focus much more on the jihadists. Sharia law in the United States. How do we ban it and ban it permanently? I'll leave you with Bruce Springsteen. We'll be back in the War Room in just a couple of minutes. Stick around. On the streets of